We like to talk about films for your consumption. Come take a seat, I'll tell you something. If you like movies, we're the thing for you. You're watching FilmBrew Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. This is episode 6.
We're 6 episodes in
of the FilmBrew Podcast. We're your host. My name is Jason Perez.
I'm Brody Mascanias.
And guys, thank you.
Thank you.
You guys might have noticed we've got our 6th table of the show now. 6th
table. It shatters so easily.
We got our 6th table of the show.
We've had this table before?
No, we've never had this.
Okay.
That's why, no, I'm being serious. Look, there's a whole section of my room missing because that's where this thing used to be.
We'll see how long it lasts.
Give it a warm welcome to the show. Round of applause, everyone.
So we're 6 episodes in, but we've been doing this podcast for
about
5 months.
5 months?
Yeah. So on average, we got an episode out for every month we've been doing this.
We were slow rolling at the beginning, I think.
That's true.
And I mean, I think it was worth it taking the time because now we've kind of gotten our format down, how we like setting things up. Even though we've had kind of a different setting each time, we've made it work.
You should see the setting.
Yeah, you should see.
Time.
I'll probably put a picture of it right now. But yeah, so episode 5, continuing with our series of kind of recognizing Black history and some of the great impactful films that people of the Black community have made. We're carrying on this little series. Today we're talking about something quite interesting, bro.
Quite an interesting film. Quite a big film.
Spike Lee, formerly known as Shelton Jackson Lee. He's a director, he's a producer, screenwriter, he's a professor. We're going to be talking about Bamboozled.
But before we get into that,
Brody.
Can't be called FilmBrew
without the brew. So Brody, I think I'll take over introducing the coffee for today.
Go ahead.
Today we have a marvelous Peace Coffee.
Tried it. We're supposed to wait for the podcast to try out coffees, but this guy over here decided to try it before
I
the
was
podcast.
curious about the coffee. All right, if it makes you guys feel any better, right? Mr. Sane, shout out to Mr. Sane again. We shout him out almost all the time on the podcast.
Shout out to Mr. Sane.
He gifted us 3 big old bags of Pete's coffee. And we can't be thankful enough. Fortunately, I had a little bit of money when I went to Sprouts and I bought us some glorious Peace coffee. Because, sometimes you need a little bit of peace in the world. And what better to put peace into this world than with a nice, fine, dark roast coffee. Brody forgot to bring the French press to the podcast today, so we made it in a regular coffee maker. So pour us a nice, glorious, juicy mug of coffee because I will be explaining the coffee because there's a little bit of background behind this coffee today, guys. All right, so it's a dark roast. This was a ground coffee. It's organic and fair trade. So fair trade means that this coffee comes from both local farmers and kind of small independent farmers from all across the world. So in Ethiopia, kind of South American farmers, and fair trade basically means that we aren't exploiting these people. These people are giving us this fresh organic coffee, and in return, we give them. First of all, we pay them right, and second of all, we appreciate. It's Peace Coffee, everyone.
Always appreciate coffee, especially coffee makers. You do something special that we can never do. One day, maybe.
The day that coffee makers and bean farmers all go away is the day when just the FilmBrew Podcast can't carry on anymore. So this coffee is actually really interesting, right?
Tastes like the trees.
It's called Tree Hugger. I don't know if you guys noticed that. I'll pull it up a little closer. Anyway, I will be linking the website to this coffee in the description below. So if you guys want to try this coffee with us, you're more than welcome to. You're always more than welcome to.
Very earthy coffee.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm in.
I'm in it for good.
I'm in it. I'm not coming out, right?
That is good coffee. This is some good coffee right here.
Coffee, dude. All right, so Peace Coffee's kind of motto is coffee creates community. All right, guys. So If you go over to their website, I'll probably have it on the screen. Coffee creates community. The heart of Peace Coffee has always been our local and global communities. From our founding 25 years ago, we've been contributing to coffee and funds of all sorts of events that create, uplift, and celebrate goodness in our world. Obviously, these events aren't happening right now, pandemic. So in our ways, we're showing up for one another, creating a change dramatically. So recently, for Black Lives Matter, Black History Month, Peace Coffee has created a kind of a mural for George Floyd. Not only George Floyd, but some of the people who have unfortunately lost their lives due to police brutality in the United States. I'll have the link in the description, probably put up a picture. And if you scroll a little bit more down from that, you will see where to donate. And basically they've curated a list of organizations, some local and national, to, where you can put your money to uplift Black and brown communities. And I think that's just a great thing Peace Coffee has done. Besides their incredible coffee, they are incredible people, and this is coming back on the show.
Definitely.
Soon.
They have the Ethiopian coffee. I want to really try that. I heard a lot of good things about Ethiopian coffee.
A lot of their sourcing comes from Ethiopia too, so fair trade,
Peace
organic,
and love,
peace and love. So yeah,
uncut gems.
This coffee is very good.
Very uncut gems coffee.
What does that mean?
No, this coffee. Let me take one more sip.
The tasting notes, it's just called nutty and adventurous. You can take that however you might take that, but
I sense nature. I feel like I'm in
nature. Yeah.
I'm like a poet in the early 1900s, and I'm out in a cabin and I'm looking at the trees in the early morning.
I feel like I'm just in the woods. I kind of have my camp set up, my fire, my dog next to me, and I have this, metal pot over a flaming fire, the crackling. I'm reading a book. Inside of the pot is my boiling water that I'm gonna pour into my French press that Brody didn't bring to the podcast today.
My bad.
And just life is good.
It reminds me of Jim Jarmusch's
leaves.
film, Adam Driver starring Patterson. Watch Patterson. This coffee reminds me of that film. Melanie, shout out to Melanie Garcia. You know what I'm talking about.
Peace Coffee. I want to thank you so much. And before we carry on a little more, I want to give a special thanks to a personal friend of the show.
Peace and love.
Peace and love. All right. So Georgie decided to bless us with some beautiful art. Dude, it's us.
It's us. It's us.
It's us.
He's a great artist. So if you're out there, thank you for this. Please leave a comment with the funny moments from this podcast. Even though I don't know if there'll be much, but we slip up from time to time.
This is beautiful artwork. Look, you got the dark hole. You got the guitar.
My mug says I'm gay.
The mug says you're gay. Does the mug lie? We got my mug. It's hereditary. And yeah, even down to Birdie's scrunchie.
It says Sarah Perry.
Not me, sir.
So now that you know. So whenever you do it, redo it. Not saying you have to.
You don't have to redo it.
You don't have to. But in case you do, or just for anyone out there who doesn't know my mug, because I thought I made it very clear my mug it's Sarah Bonito from Kira Bonito. So in case you didn't know that.
Sarah Bonito, in case you're watching this.
In case you're somehow watching the FilmBrew Podcast right now, because that's possible. Hey, I got your mug.
Anyway, Birdie, we're here to carry on talking about the film now, alright? Birdie, why don't we talk about Spike Lee? Spike Lee, formerly known as Shelton Jackson Lee. Birdie.
Filmmaker. He went to the New York Film Academy?
NYU.
NYU. Okay, so he went to NYU. And he's known for a lot of the early independent films he's made.
He was born in Atlanta, Georgia, son of a teacher of arts and black literature, and a jazz musician.
He did, on She's Gotta Have It, his first debut feature-length film, which is on Netflix, and it's also a spin-off show directed by him as well, also on Netflix. I believe it was his dad who did the soundtrack for it.
That's crazy. It is pretty cool. I already finished my coffee. This coffee is so good.
It's really good. Don't drink it all. You almost poured that on my phone. everywhere.
Anyway, so Lee attended Morehouse College. That's the first college he really attended, and that's where he made his first student film, which is called Last Hustle in Brooklyn. I have not seen it. Have you?
I've not seen it. I'm very poor when it comes to Spike Lee. He's one of those filmmakers that are up there for me. My dad has seen a lot from him, and has always told me I need to watch from him. I've seen a couple, not as much as I really want to. I've seen Do the Right Thing though, which I think that's an essential piece of not only cinema, but I think I think Do the Right Thing is one of those films that's just simply an essential piece of, living in this country. And that's just a film you need to see.
Yeah. So actually, in 2015, Lee won an Academy Honorary Award from the Academy of Film Arts and Sciences. Right. Not crazy.
That's pretty cool.
And in 2018, right, Spike Lee, in an interview with GQ, he actually cited that some of his influences, Martin Scorsese, he cited Mean Streets.
Who hasn't Scorsese inspired,
I mean, he even inspires us, man.
He inspires everyone. What a great dude. Hey,
Scorsese, if you're watching this.
Scorsese. Quick shout out to Martin Scorsese.
If you're watching this, Martin Scorsese. Try Peace Coffee. This is the greatest coffee ever.
Shout out to Mr. Sane. I just got a text. I'm not going to check it right now. I'm sorry. For the sake of the podcast. But shout out to Mr. Sane.
So, I don't know if you knew this, but Spike Lee actually met Martin Scorsese at a screening of After Hours.
That's so cool.
NYU.
That's such a cool thing.
And I don't know, to think these brilliant minds just meeting, it's
at a screening of After Hours.
It's just beautiful.
Nonetheless.
That's the most hipster thing you could ever think of.
Hey, I met Scorsese at a screening of After Hours.
Thanks for the information, Spike Lee. Me and Brody, a while ago, we were on a Discord call, and we just started, we played a game. We played a game of, we can find, the weirdest picture of Martin Scorsese and Spike Lee. And
20.
we found 20 of him with Spike Lee.
And
so we kind of made it a game to see who could find the weirdest picture of Martin Scorsese with Spike Lee. So I'm probably going to show a couple of them on the screen right now. Comment down below which one's your favorite.
You love second photos.
We might make a poll. Let's make a poll.
Which Scorsese and Spike Lee photo is your favorite?
Which Minecraft player are you?
Which Minecraft player are you?
Enough about Spike Lee. Let's talk about Bamboozled, directed by Spike Lee.
So Bamboozled, 2000 film. Before we get any more into it, we should state that this is Spike Lee, and this is saying something because if you've seen Do the Right Thing, or even one of his more later films, Black Klansman, he don't play around. He's very open. If he has something to say, he'll say it. And Spike Lee is a very powerful storyteller, and so again, he's not going to hide anything. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. He got something to say, he'll say it. And so with that being said, I guess warnings for content warnings for everything that's going to come, I suppose. Yeah.
I think this is one of our most, I wouldn't say disturbing, but one of our most heavy in terms of content films. And Bamboozled. Put that thing up there.
Bamboozled. Right. This is what we're going to be talking about. So if you're already set off, one, I suggest you do watch this film. As hard as it is to stomach, we recently had a conversation in our journalism class that it is important to watch these kinds of films and understand this kind of history. Because yes, it's uncomfortable, yes, it's unsettling, but it is history nonetheless. And it's very important to recognize it and acknowledge that, although this is a satire piece of fiction, everything it talks about is true. It's all real history, especially in something we're both passionate in, film. It's important to see a film and talk about a film like this that talks about the negatives, especially when it comes to race.
And that's a big thing in this day and age. A lot of people are kind of, we can talk about the current legislature going on in Florida about banning critical race theory from schools. I guess this film kind of plays to that sort of audience, the people who are too afraid to acknowledge these problems that we have in our society and kind of shy away and kind of shelter it. But in reality, what that really does is kind of
just erasing it,
ignoring the atrocities that occurred to minorities because of white people.
So that is how we're going to start this off. Talk about Bamboozled, Spike Lee's 2000 film in response to the coming to 100 years of cinema.
And 50 years of television.
Yes. And this is what this film is more really about, is the way a lot of television made fun and poked fun at black people for white audiences.
Yeah. So we can talk about kind of the way the film gets set up at the beginning. At the beginning of the film, we get introduced to a quite strange character off the bat. His name is Pierre Delacroix. Pierre Delacroix, played by Damon Wayans. He's introduced as kind of like a successful TV show writer for kind of a failing TV production company.
Yeah. And why is it failing?
Because Delacroix is kind of making content to represent African Americans in television, because he feels that African Americans are misrepresented in television. He takes jabs at things like Bill Cosby.
What was it called? The Johnsons or something?
Yeah.
Basically, look up 80s, 70s, black television shows, and you'll see the main premise of most of them. And we're watching this video right now that really explained it perfectly, that white audiences don't want to see a show about black people if they can't laugh at them.
Yeah. They don't want to see kind of a dignified black person on television with, a complex story and meaning behind it.
Which is what Delacroix was really pushing out.
Yeah. And so since he was pushing out these kind of content, trying to, give African Americans kind of like a good representation on television, unfortunately they weren't getting good reviews. And that's why this television production company was suffering. And
we know how television companies are production companies overall. They don't care about messages, they care about ratings.
His boss, Dunwitty, right, is pressuring him because they're not making any views, right? So he gives them this ultimatum, right? He says, come up with this program to make up for sagging ratings on the television company. He kind of hypes it up. He's like, I need something that's gonna make people want to watch, something great. And so he comes up with this idea. Birdie.
Let's talk about Dunwitty first and his character, played by Michael Rappaport, who you may not know from the name, but I know you know who he is. One way or another, you know his face. What an interesting character.
Great. So Dunwitty's kind of like a guy who, he kind of fetishizes being black.
Yeah.
So
which he's not.
He's a white guy.
Okay.
All right, put him on the screen. He fetishizes being black, and he kind of likes comparing being black. He says, he's got a black wife, he's got black kids. He's like, yeah, I love black people. He tells.
He's the type of person who will love the black culture because he'll never be a part of it.
Exactly.
There's that whole conversation. I forgot who said this. It was such a strong quote. It was something like, everybody wants to be black until they gotta be black.
Yeah.
He's from an outside perspective. As much as he wants to be in, he never will.
Yeah, so I remember he tells Delacroix in one scene, he's like, I'm blacker than you.
Yeah.
A white guy telling an African American, I'm blacker than you. Kind of because Delacroix, he becomes a caricature of a white person because of his position. He's the only black guy in a white in his workspace. They're mostly white people, and he tries to become marketable towards them, and that kind of puts him in a place where he is, for lack of a better word, whitewashed to be accepted by people in the black community.
And so it's just right down there in the middle.
And two white people in the film see him too much as a caricature of them, and that puts him in a weird place.
And it's this tragedy of his character is that at first he really has a strong idea whether or not he really executed it well. He had something because he knew that he thought the obvious, people are gonna hate this show because it's racist, like that. But then he fed into the money, which is what happens to a lot of people, black or not. it happens to the best of us.
Yeah,
You know,
so
you lose respect that way. That's how it happens. But like, there's a thing called selling out, and a lot of people do it, especially people who want to tell messages, but then they get eaten up by corporations and the money, which is why I always try to stay away from that area in media. But Delacroix represents that, that person who tries to, the whole thing about, people always saying, no, you got to go to college, you got to get a government job, you got to get higher positions because you got to take the
higher route.
You got to take it from inside, You got to be the inside man. You got to take it out from the inside. You got to destroy the system from the inside. They'll always say that. There'll always be that saying. But I think what Delacroix represents is that saying. Is that once you get too far in, you sort of become what you're trying to defeat.
You get, what, lack of a better word, just become a sellout.
Yeah.
And so Delacroix becomes kind of consumed with this idea that he's going to create a television show that creates proper representation of African Americans in TV. And so he comes up with this offensive, kind of racist show called The New Millennium Minstrel Show. If you guys don't know what a minstrel show is, right? Minstrel show is a form of American racist entertainment back in like the early 19th century. And it was white people doing blackface. And it was just basically exploitation of African Americans in the United States. We saw a little bit of that in The Watermelon Woman too. It kind of touched on...
We did. That's a little bit of what I was talking about, how black women were... Only times you see them in films were as maids or something of the sort. Which I forgot, but I was watching an interview with Spike Lee, and he was talking about a famous black actress from that time, and the reason she justified being a maid. And she was like, I'd rather play a maid than be a maid. And like, I think that goes into these two characters of the film, which we'll get into later, about how, it's hard to really blame them during that time, because during that time it really was, you're either going to be a maid or you're going to play a maid. We can look at a film like The Jazz Singer, a very appraised film. It was the first film with a line of dialogue said. That was the first time audiences heard words in films. What does that film have in it? It has blackface in it. So a film as appraised and as, important to the film world, it has blackface in it, So it is very prominent in film and history of entertainment.
So kind of later in the film, we're introduced to two characters, Manry and Womack, that you will see on the cover of the Criterion right here. These are, on the verge of homelessness pretty much. Yeah. And what they're doing is, Manry is kind of a tap dancer. What did he say? Feet don't fail me now.
Feet don't fail me now.
And basically, he's a tap dancer dancing on the streets for money, and that's how they're basically living. They're living off of that, and they're in a state of vulnerability, like Brody said earlier.
Which I'm glad, because in the film, right before that conference happens, where between those two characters and the producers of the show, their house gets raided, or their living space gets raided by the police. And that's what puts them in that state of vulnerability. So we could understand their characters from that perspective. Oh man, they don't really got anywhere to go. You could look at it from your perspective. What would you do in that situation?
So these two characters are then approached by Pierre Delacroix, played by Damon Wayans. Kind of brings up the proposition to them, not really clearly at first. They're kind of just given the opportunity to be on television and make money, and that sounds great from their perspective. They're not making ends meet very well, and kind of given this opportunity, you're gonna take it. Around this time is where we also meet Salome Hopkins, played by Jada Pinkett Smith.
Her character is the assistant of Delacroix, and her character kind of represents the both sides argument towards situations like these.
But you also can't blame Salome, because she's kind of in the same situation that the other two are in, because this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity for her. She talks about how she interned for Delacroix at first, and got this big job. She's in a comfortable spot, and revolting against this idea would mean losing her job, and I guess, you know, she doesn't have much of an option at that point. Let's talk about the scene where they're kind of at a conference, and the ideas gone into depth about what Man Ray and Womack are getting into.
Yeah. Rappaport's character is very excited about it. Very excited about everything. So they're at the table thing. You know, he's all telling them about the story and everything. I think one of the most prominent parts about this scene is where he was talking about the setting of where the show would take place. And this is where the white man, this is how I kind of took it, is where the white man gets his hand in a play. And it's a very crucial part because of where he decided to take place. But yeah, so, you know, De La Croix goes to him and is like, okay, I got the idea for the show. This dude is static about it. He tells him about everything that the show's gonna be about. And the dude's static about it. He's loving it. You know, when Man Ray gets on the table, starts tap dancing, he's static about it. He tells him, he says, show me how you tap dance.
Yeah. And while Delacroix is explaining what his idea for the New Millennium Minstrel show is going to be, it is important to see how Womack reacts to his explanation, because while he's explaining, you know, they're gonna be doing blackface, it's gonna be taking place in at first
him and Stallone,
and Stallone
on the edge about it.
Yeah, he explains
naturally,
you know, about how they're gonna be doing blackface, how it's gonna be, at first he proposed the idea that the show will take place on a plantation, and Womack is like, you know, taken back by it, obviously. You know, but
Dunwoody, the white man, is the one who proposed to have it take place on a plantation.
And we kind of see the two characters, Womack and Man Ray, hesitant, but again, it's that realization that this is their really only option.
Cash rules everything around.
And you know, that's a pretty big part. Again, Stallone hesitant, but it's kind of the only option for them. And so naturally they, you know, take on the role as two characters.
We also see some other characters. We see the band that Mos Def's character, Jada Pinkett Smith's brother in the film, plays. We see their band up in it, and it's very, how do I explain it? It's so strange seeing each band play out in their reactions towards it.
Because it's the whole montage where there's people auditioning for kind of acts on the show. We're also is that where we're also introduced to Honeycutt?
Yes,
we're introduced to Honeycutt, a character, and what he kind of represents in the film is the person who is just willing to do anything, right? Even though you know, getting put in this place
may not be the most conventional, or
it kind of like compromises their integrity.
You lose your integrity at one point, you know. And his character is also very old. He's portrayed as an old man, and so at this time period, you know, he's seen it all. He's been through it all. That at one point, you know, there's a people who stay strong about it, and there's people who lose themselves within it.
So that whole montage of people auditioning for the show, I feel like that was one of the most hard to watch pieces because of how you kind of saw people kind of you know, bringing themselves down auditioning for this. You know, they were in a place of desperation, and taking on this role in a racist minstrel show shows that desperation. And you know, again, you can't really blame them for putting themselves in that position. You know, moving on in the film a little bit more, we kind of see this minstrel show in action. Delacroix and Dunwoody, you know, producing this. It's a live audience show.
One of the most a very powerful but also very devastating scenes is every scene that they have to put the blackface on themselves. They have to put blackface on, if that wasn't clear. I feel that was like a metaphor for many things. One, for the real blackface that was done, obviously, but I also feel there's a metaphor with it with when the 70s came around, where they weren't really doing blackface, but it was a metaphorical blackface that, you know, a lot of black actors were forced, you know, to put on to make a white audience laugh.
I remember seeing an interview where Spike Lee said, this is a movie that you should laugh at. But then he says that it was his intent and purpose to make it so the audience sits there and is like, should I be laughing at this? And in the same interview, the actors that played Man Ray and Womack, Womack played by Tommy Davidson and Man Ray played by Savion Glover, he was talking about how every single time that they had to put the blackface on, making Bamboozled, that they would cry.
Yeah.
That these actors would cry putting on blackface, and
I think that's really shown because I think it was the second time they were gonna film where they're putting on blackface. I think it was Womack's character who says it's showtime, and you could see that he's like tearing up saying it. And I think there's 3 scenes where they put it on, and those 3 scenes are some of the most powerful in the whole film because you really see them just degrading themselves.
Yeah. Those were some of the hardest scenes to watch. Like not many films make me do this, but I wanted to close my eyes watching those scenes because they were just very hard scenes.
It's a film that really is a very powerful film, and I think everyone who's watching this should watch this film.
Yeah. Okay, so once this kind of show is playing out, that Delacroix and Dunwity are, producing, we see there's a live audience, and the live audience adds so much to this film because while on the screen we're seeing this minstrel show going on,
every racial trope that there is shown in these shows, and you see this audience laughing at it.
Yeah, and that kind of shows what Spike Lee was kind of kind of representing white people seeing black people in the media again. So like one thing I was thinking of after I watched this was Steve Urkel, kind of shown to be like a silly, goofy character. Back then you really didn't see any accurate representation of African Americans in the media, right? So I feel like Steve Urkel was a pretty good example of more modern minstrel show, because if you think about it, that's pretty much just a minstrel show.
And I think that's what Spike Lee was getting at, is that growing up, because he said he grew up in a very proud to be black family. His mom and father always taught him to be proud of who he was, and so they never really had this kind of stuff shown in him. But then once he would go out, and I believe he said in his school he was shown Birth of a Nation, which then led him to make a short film about very much, I think, was what inspired him later on to make Bamboozled. But one of his early short films, after being shown Birth of a Nation, he made the short film of this black director getting paid, I think like $1 million or something to remake Birth of the Nation, and he takes the money for it. And I believe in this interview he said that was his inspiration for Delacroix.
So moving on, kind of after a couple of these episodes play out, first we see Womack kind of realizing and kind of it's taking a toll on him as a person.
It happens right when Man Ray teaches his group of tap dancers that he's trying to teach. He sees them lash out on them,
and kind of getting sucked into this same thing that Delacroix was. I feel like this was kind of a representation of Man Ray kind of becoming what Delacroix has already become, and this kind of something clicks in Womack's head, and he confronts Man Ray about it. He's like, why are you treating these people like this? And there's some conflict that happens.
And right before they film what I think it was their last one, Honeycutt. Well, actually, we should talk about Paul Mooney's character, who plays Delacroix's father, and what that means in terms of film. He represents that person who stayed true to his beliefs, whether or not that really worked with Delacroix.
Yeah. And I want to talk about how when Delacroix's mother catches wind of Delacroix producing, writing, creating this show, when Delacroix's mother sees, she calls him and she tells him basically, you are a disappointment.
Yeah.
Because you are creating, this atrocity, this misrepresentation of, black people in the media. And this is kind of where it shows Delacroix's nature change and his goals change, because at the beginning of the film his goal was to create a show, a satire basically, something to shock the people who watch it. and it just slowly became a kind of like a cash grab, sacrificing his culture and his integrity for compensation.
In that scene where he goes backstage and talks to his dad, you can see his dad is also as well disappointed, but also De La Croix is disappointed in his father as well. And this is where he sells out. It's within this scene, because he's like, I don't want to be here, and if I have to sell out my show and become another puppet, then hey, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
that is what he does.
And I think one of the striking things about the show is in Delacroix's office we see a bunch of racist kind of memorabilia, and his collection kind of grows the more he sells out, which was interesting.
So his first gift of this memorabilia he gets is of the person who swallows the coins.
Yeah.
And as the film digresses, he starts hallucinating, and it just keeps doing it by itself. And I feel that, you know, represents him in his head, what he's become.
Yeah, exactly.
Just swallowing up coins. Although portrayed as everything that, you know, he was going against at first, he's now become that because he's swallowing up the coins.
And that might be a representation of what Dunwoody sees Delacroix as.
Yeah.
You know, kind of how he's seen by other white people. And this is where kind of like a what's the word? Like a revelation is made in his head.
Let's talk about what Honeycutt does before, before we get in that, because right before, so I guess during this, De La Croix is still in the state he was. You know, he's still in it for the money, and Womack has just left, so it's just Man Ray by himself now. But before this episode is recorded, because as we stated, every episode of this was recorded in front of a live audience full of extras, which in an interview he stated that a lot of those extras didn't know what they're getting into. So that's as far as I got with that research. So I don't know how much was scripted and how much wasn't.
There was obviously some that was like obviously scripted.
Yeah, but then there's also some that are just if you told me, oh no, that wasn't scripted, I'd believe it, you know, because
they were like genuine reactions from the audience.
So at this point the show has become a hit, and so it's one of the most horrific images in this film is that the entire audience, full of many different colors, are all in blackface. The entire audience is in blackface, including Dunwoody, who's in the booth. And so
I feel like this represents kind of the same thing as Dunwoody. I feel like Dunwoody did not change a single bit. Yeah. Just he has blackface on. But everyone else just took one step closer to becoming.
And it goes in that quote
Dunwoody
about how everyone wants to be black until they have to be black. You know,
exactly.
That entire audience will put on the blackface and laugh because they don't have to face the horrors of what that represents.
Yeah. I feel like the audience is fetishizing not black people, but they're fetishizing the image of what they think being black is.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would be impossible to fetishize black people for what they've been through and their history. Because if you really were to do that, then you'd, you know, be someone who fetishizes being enslaved. And I feel like that quote just hits it exactly. Yeah. You know, everyone wants to be black until they have to be black. They are consumed with their own perception, their own imaginative image of black people, not what black people really are in their culture.
And so that whole scene, and it goes on to Honeycutt going up and asking the audience, and all of them saying, using a racial slur, saying, "I'm this."
You know? Well, Honeycutt asked them. They're like, "Are you
proud to say it?" They're proud about it because they're not.
Is when he comes up to this old white lady, and he asks, "Are you a," you know, and the old white lady gets up and she, you know, with her chest, she says, "Yes, I am a," and like that.
Yeah.
I felt kind of like my heart become heavy because it was tough. It's tough to really watch this.
And this is when Man Ray comes out with his revelation. So after that whole scene, after being put through all that,
because that scene is happening because they're stalling, because Womack is not showing up because he, you know, as we earlier discussed, he's not deciding to further partake in this show.
And neither is Stallone at this point. I think
Stallone got fired.
Oh, she got fired. Yes, she got fired from it. And so, Man Ray comes out by himself without the blackface on, and this causes some stir already.
And this is really important. The fact that he comes out without blackface shows that the audience isn't satisfied with a black person being who they are. You know,
just being a black person, just being
a normal person like everyone else. You know,
they don't like that. They don't like to see that.
If a black person is on screen and they are not making a mockery and a fool of themselves, they are not entertained. And that right there just sums up pretty much what the film is focusing on. So while Brody cracks a cold one while people are being discriminated against in the United States, I want to introduce to you guys Health Aid Kombucha.
Well, this kind of goes into Bamboozled because there is a segment where they kind of do the exact same thing. They show these two commercials, which I don't think we could go too in depth with.
Yes.
But they're commercials kind of like what we just did right now, which wasn't planned. We didn't mean to do that.
But we're doing it with a purpose. We don't actually mean this, okay? Right. So this kind of takes a jab at capitalism as well and
exploits the minorities, you know?
Exactly.
So exploits people in a rut to keep them in a rut.
So explain how the commercials were kind of just using the image of black people to drive their product.
So first is the bomb, which is, you know, it kind of portrays as like a, you know, a late 90s, early 2000s rap video, which is people, you know, dancing around and everything. And it's talking about this product for you to buy, you know, is like, buy, give us your money. You need this. Look at us having a good time. You need this. You need this. So buy it. And it's more the second commercial that's shown that really hit a little bit more closer, because this is something that I think every minority, no matter who you are or what minority group you belong to, has faced, especially mainly in America. And this is something that I've, you know, spent a lot of my life. I'm only 18 years old, but I spent quite a while in my life trying to fight against this. Yeah. And that is brands buying us out. So
we all know the popular brand Tommy Hilfiger, and the film takes a jab at this brand with, you know, a brand in the film called Tommy, another word.
Yeah.
And it's in the film, it's a brand marketed towards black people, you know, telling them, you know, you need this product because you're gonna look good in it, and this product is for you.
And it's what he says, you'll stay poor as you keep me rich. That's a line.
Like, he literally says it in his own ad. You know, of course it's a satirical film, but in essence this is kind of what is happening in America when it comes to different brands.
We kind of learn about this in English class right now, how some advertisements will target specific groups, and although that might seem, oh, this product is for me, oh, this product is for our group, for our people, what it really means is, a lot of the time, not always, you know, there's always, you know, independent brands and, you know, local brands that are for, you know, like our people and everything. And other times when brands are made in big corporate buildings, like the show that the film is talking about, it's just to keep them rich and keep you poor.
Yeah, I want to talk about H&M. H&M is a streetwear brand. You're gonna see it in your malls, your big malls, and online shopping. H&M is a streetwear brand marketed towards. Now they're not gonna say this, but it's so obviously marketed towards low-income people who want to appear fashionable. You know, you're gonna see on your Instagram, social media pages, these people with streetwear clothing. This is something I fell into kind of my freshman year of high school with the, you know, image. I'll probably put up a picture of what kind of the fashion, you know, fashion forward kind of look was, and H&M kind of presented this in an affordable way. You know, you can look like these people at a low price. I no longer have any of those clothing because they ripped within about 2 runs to the washing machine. That's $12, $20, $50, $200 gone. Yeah.
And like, so I want to go on a little tangent here, just a little rant, just a little bit. You know, this is our podcast. Let me have a little time to just rant about this. Not just in America, but from civilizations and throughout history, since the start of history, fashion has been this thing to create the way people view you. It creates class. It creates, social status. That has always been something I'm always against. I think I don't care what you wear. You could dress fancy, you could dress lousy. I'm not going to define you by what you wear.
I want to add to that a little bit, because while that does exist, while it is a problem, there is kind of a movement of people who support anti-capitalist approach to fashion. I get all my clothes secondhand from anywhere I can get them.
And people who make their own clothes.
And people who make their own clothes. Those are people, and while, they do it with a specific intent to, like, look good, but not, like, look good like is in the guy or girl on your social media page. It's funny because I'm wearing a Tommy Hilfiger sweater.
You are.
I got this at a thrift store.
How much did you pay for it though?
$6.
See, that's different. You see, I'm wearing a Frankenstein shirt and the cardigan.
I'm wearing a Tommy Hilfiger sweater.
Yeah, so this is like, you've been bamboozled.
I've been bamboozled.
You've been bamboozled.
I
got this secondhand from my girlfriend. So.
Yeah, like it's a movement. I see a lot.
I'm wearing pants got peed on.
My dog peed on him.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a movement. I see a lot of people, going this route of buying clothes secondhand. While this might be Tommy Hilfiger, I didn't, pay what this would be like.
You didn't pay Tommy Hilfiger.
$80.
Yeah.
At the mall.
To Tommy.
I paid. Sorry, Tom. All the Toms in the world. I'm so sorry, but I bought this for like $6. Yeah, that was a good tangent.
A good tangent. Now back to the main topic at hand. Marion comes on stage without blackface, and they're not happy about that. And then he goes off this tangent, because on the first episode of what they're shooting, he's all like making fun of who he is. They were saying, "Go out your window and say all this." Then on this, when he's not in blackface, he kind of, it's like writing an essay. When you say a thesis statement, he restates his thesis, but opposite. He says everything they don't want to hear. They're like, no. And so the producers, Delacroix himself included, go out there, they drag him off stage, they throw him out the building. And one of the hardest lines in this film is where when he says, "I can replace you easily," and replace him like that. Because that's true, we could think, especially when a person of color, gets to this position in life, they think, "Oh, I have made it," I've, become what I thought I could never become. You think they won't replace me.
Yeah. So Mangay gets replaced by Honeycutt. Honeycutt,
just like that.
A character like we explained before. He's kind of the character who is willing to do anything, probably because of his old age. He's at the point where this is all he's got. It's either this or poverty, and so he's in this role where he is dehumanizing himself. And one of the toughest, most deep parts of the movie is when he goes into the stands where the live audience is. And
so after he gets thrown out, we need to talk about that hip hop group first. We need to talk about Stallone's brother.
Is part of a rebellion group called the Mau Mau's.
And it's funny because there's a scene where they're talking about how Delacroix is, he's become the white man and whatnot. And they have a white man in the group.
Yeah.
And they don't acknowledge it. They just let him, and he goes on this rap. He starts freestyling as if he's one of them.
Yeah, he freestyles about being black.
Yeah.
As a person who's not black.
And they're fine with it.
Yeah,
it kind of shows the hypocrisy. And they also have the bomb, which is one of those products.
Yeah, the capitalist products being
I guess this was
targeted to them.
And this was like Spike Lee's way of saying that, hey, more people than you think get fed into it. Once again, it's hard to put the blame on these people because, it's what they become, especially living in America. When this is all you see yourself represented as.
I feel like that this was a take on kind of liberal media, on how kind of performative activism and, these people were a violent group. While that's not all bad, they were really violent, but with no
Violence isn't that bad.
They were not.
That's for the film Brew is promoting.
Okay, well,
violence against the right people isn't that bad.
Yeah, exactly. Peace,
Anyways,
coffee.
Peace, coffee.
While, violence is a touchy subject because while there has been examples of violence where you can understand, right, and it is pushing towards something, it's in a place of desperation, like a lot of things, a lot of people.
I believe in violence.
A lot of people they
not useless violence.
Not useless violence, which is what the Mau Maus are pretty much standing for. They're causing destruction where it's not needed. And I want to tie this to Black Lives Matter, which are pushed down by a lot of the media for being a violent group. But it's something that you got to think about because they are in a place where I saw a statistic of like 99% of Black Lives Matter movements are peaceful, and the
media don't care about that.
But the media really only televises the like 1% that get out of hand, which are mostly instigated by the police. Yeah. And you got to think that these are people who have been trying for the past 100 years.
If you don't hear them while they're marching, they're gonna burn your building down.
Exactly.
And that's just how it is.
Moving on with the Mau Maus, right? Towards the end of the film,
they capture Man Ray as he's thrown out the building. And there's this interesting thing is what Delacroix says in voiceover. So they capture him and they're gonna do something to him, right? And so Delacroix is all like, there's gonna be a live snuff film for all of America to see. It's gonna be televised, and in a way that's exactly what he was kind of doing himself. But this is where it becomes real for him. This is where he sees what he has created.
And so when the police catch wind of this, they raid the Mau Mau's kind of stronghold little place. And the important part here is they kill every black person that's a part
except
of the
that
Mau Maus.
one white person we're talking about that was in the group.
Exactly.
He does not get shot. And he's all starting to say, like, why didn't you shoot me? There's a lot of stuff.
And I feel like the fact that he said it, why didn't you shoot me, kind of shows that he's ignorant to the fact that he wasn't targeted because he was not black.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that, about how, you could try, we're all for people of every race uniting, including white people. But when it comes to white people, you have to acknowledge the fact that, you could speak with us, but you can't speak for us, if that makes sense. And that you need to acknowledge the power you have.
Shout out to Hannah Rouse.
I was going to say that. He's going to write an article about something. We won't spoil it, but we'll put a link to it whenever it gets published. It's going to be a great article about something along the lines of this. Is that if you got that white privilege, you need to acknowledge that. If you ignore it, you're kind of just part of the problem, which is what he was doing. He was ignoring the fact that he had more privilege than the rest of the group.
And instead of using that privilege to an advantage to kind of push the group forward, he decided, no, I'm not privileged, and I am speaking for these people. I
went through 3 beverages.
You want to take a
lot to talk about.
You want to take a little booze break?
I don't think you could drink that with coffee.
You can. Bubbly probiotic tea.
Yeah, that's gut. Like mixing that with coffee, which is like the opposite of that. Or you're mixing it with coffee. I didn't mean like physically mixing with coffee. But
kombucha is my favorite drink of all time. It's basically a probiotic tea. It's got living probiotics inside of it. Little guys who are gonna go in your tummy and clean you. All right. I drink this in the morning, in the middle of the day, and the night.
That was Spike Lee's Bamboozled. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you, Jason. How was your week?
My week.
What news you got? What news you got for us this week? It's only Tuesday. We usually film these on Fridays, so that doesn't really work out for this episode.
It doesn't. Well, we'll talk about the week so far.
Yeah.
We're 2 days in the week.
2 days in the week.
This is the most stressful week of my life.
Yeah, I'm filming a commercial.
And I don't know why.
I'm trying to think about movie-related news.
I'm losing hair.
I'm losing so much hair. I did a Frankenstein double feature yesterday for Valentine's Day. Bride of Frankenstein and Frankenstein. Good films. Really great films. James
Damn
Whale,
good
great
movie.
director. You drink it?
Yeah.
You drink it all. You drink it all. We're going to be seeing some more films in theaters. I got some more reviews coming out. Check out the discussion page for those.
Yeah.
And
Those of you guys who are watching from this discussion page, you're cool. But, shame. But, what are you doing? Go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Comment.
Georgie,
If you're not commenting,
I don't know if
you're
you're going to
whack.
find a lot of funny moments in this. You might.
This was
No,
more
you
of a deep. It's going to probably be a little bit longer than our usual podcast, but it's got a lot of important things.
Yeah, okay, so like, you watch Bamboozled. If you guys, something that's been making me happy recently is that I noticed some people watching the podcast would be like, I watched this, but I stopped it because I'm going to go watch what you guys are talking about.
And
then
that
come
is
back.
what we need.
That is
everybody.
the goal of this podcast. Like, if you're going to watch it, if you come up to and say, I wanted to watch it, but I don't want to watch this first before I watch it, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's the goal of this podcast
And Birdie,
either way.
Speaking of things that people need to watch before they watch the podcast,
Bamboozled.
what do you have for us next week?
Next week, which hopefully is recorded Friday, we got Shame. Steve McQueen's film, Michael Fassbender starring Carey Mulligan, and a very powerful film directed by Steve McQueen, and we will be talking about this film. So Shame, I'll just say it is an NC-17 rated film. We're both 18 years old, so we're okay. But anyone out there who's not 18, or anyone who has issues about content involving nudity and sex and self-harm, depression, isolation, a lot of things happen in this film. It's a very vulnerable film in a different sense of Bamboozled, but in the same sense that Bamboozled didn't hold back, neither does Shame and what the story is trying to tell.
Yeah.
And so this is the film we'll be looking at next week.
So Bamboozled, man. I don't think there's been a film that I've learned more from this film than I've learned from a lot of other films. Because it was like an educational moment for me, you know?
This is an extremely...
You need to put yourself in this uncomfortable position.
You need to watch Bamboozled.
After you watch Bamboozled, you're gonna know a lot more, you know? You're just gonna know. First step to stopping stuff like this is educating yourself and educating the ones around you.
Yes.
And with that said, Brody, Bamboozled was a phenomenal film.
Phenomenal film.
A great... I am excited to explore more on Spike Lee. My brother is
Spike Lee.
dying right now.
So yes, next week we're going a little different. We're going to be watching Shame. It's going to be a good episode, I have a feeling.
This was a good episode.
This was
too.
a great episode. Go watch Bamboozled. Peace Coffee.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Peace
Mr.
Coffee is
Sane,
great.
for basically sporting us with the next 3 episodes of coffee, worth of coffee. This has been FilmBrew. Hey, we still got the audio recording. It's okay. The audio's still recording.
Our
We have to use a
camera,
black screen sometimes.
our camera ran out. Birdie, let's take it home. We
like to talk about films for your consumption. Come take a seat, I'll tell you something. If you like movies are the thing for you, you're watching FilmBrew. We're gonna be watching Shame, dude. Dude, we're gonna watch Shame.
I don't need to fart this time.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone who watched it, made it this far. If you made it this far, comment, I've been bamboozled.